You know you shouldn't be anxious. Logically, rationally, you understand there's no real threat. The email can wait. The presentation isn't life or death. That person's opinion doesn't actually matter. Your mind knows you're safe. But your body is screaming danger. Heart racing, chest tight, stomach churning, that familiar electric tension crawling up your spine. And here's what makes it worse. You've done the work. You've been to therapy. You understand your triggers. You know where it comes from. You've journaled, processed, talked it through. But understanding hasn't made it stop. If you've ever thought, why do I still feel this way when I know better? This is for you. Because the problem isn't that you're broken. The problem is that you're trying to update your mind when the issue is in your body. And once you understand the neurobiology of why this gap exists, you can close it yourself. Here's what's actually happening in your brain when you feel anxious despite knowing you're safe. You have two fear systems, and they're on completely different timelines. System 1, the high road, runs through your cortex, involves conscious thought. This is where your rational mind lives. This is the system that updated when you did the work. This is where your understanding lives. System 2, the low road, bypasses conscious thought entirely, runs straight from sensory input to your amygdala, triggers your body's fear response in milliseconds. This is where your anxiety actually lives. And this system doesn't speak the language of logic. When you were bullied in middle school, when your parents' rage filled the house with unpredictable danger, when you learned that speaking up meant punishment, both systems learned the same lesson. The world is threatening, and you're not safe. When you went to therapy at 25 and cognitively understood that you're an adult now with agency and options, System 1 updated. But System 2? Still running the child's program. This isn't a bug. This is a feature. Your body is designed to prioritize survival over accuracy. It would rather have 1,000 false alarms than miss one real threat. So here you are, mentally calm, physically terrified. Not because you're broken, because you have a mind-body lag. But here's where it gets interesting. Your brain is constantly making predictions. Every single moment it's calculating threat probability multiplied by coping capacity equals anxiety response. This isn't metaphorical. This is literally what your brain does. It's called predictive processing, and it's one of the most important discoveries in neuroscience. Your brain is a prediction machine. It's always asking, how dangerous is this situation, and how well can I handle it? And anxiety is what happens when your brain gets the math wrong. Specifically, when it overestimates the threat, this email will destroy my career. Underestimates your capacity, I can't handle difficult conversations. But here's the critical insight. Your brain isn't making these calculations based on objective reality. It's making them based on past data. And if your past data says speaking up leads to punishment, or social situations always go badly, or I can't handle stress, then no amount of logical understanding will update the prediction. Because your brain doesn't update predictions based on thoughts. It updates predictions based on experiences. This is why therapy often keeps you stuck. Therapy gives you new thoughts, new frameworks, new understanding. But your prediction system doesn't care about your thoughts. It cares about your lived experiences. And if your lived experiences, your actual embodied, visceral, felt experiences, haven't changed, then your predictions haven't changed. So let's reframe what anxiety actually is. Anxiety is not damage. It's not a disorder. It's not who you are. Anxiety is outdated software running on your hardware. It's a program that was installed through trauma, through repeated experiences, through childhood modeling during a time when you were vulnerable. And it's still running automatically because 1. Neurons that fire together wire together. This is called Hebbian plasticity. 2. The pattern became your default through repetition. 3. Your identity got fused with the pattern. You started thinking, I'm an anxious person, instead of, I'm a person currently experiencing anxiety. But here's the empowering part. If it was installed through repetition, it can be uninstalled through different repetition. If your brain sculpted itself into anxiety through thousands of unconscious repetitions of fear, It can sculpt itself out of anxiety through conscious repetitions of mastery. You're not broken. You're not stuck with this forever. You just need to become the programmer instead of the programmed. And that requires giving your prediction system, both the mind and the body, new experiential data. Let me tell you what I discovered when I was a teenager. I'd been chased by a dog and stung by a bee in first grade. Years later, I noticed something strange. Mentally, I knew I wasn't afraid of dogs anymore. But physically, my body told a different story. A dog would bark in the distance and I'd have zero cognitive fear, but my body would spike with adrenaline. I was fascinated. Then I was angry. Why was my body still afraid when my mind wasn't? And then I got strategic. I started running mental simulations. Not calm, reasonable visualizations. Over the top, visceral, emotionally intense scenarios. I imagined fighting dogs, dominating them, talking with them, having them be afraid of me. I didn't do this once or twice. I did it maybe close to 100 times. And here's what happened. My body caught up. The physical fear response disappeared. Not suppressed. Not managed. Gone. I did the same thing with bees, but differently. With bees, I learned about them. I let them land on my hand. I observed them with curiosity instead of fear. And the result? Same. Body response. Eliminated. Now, I know many of you are dealing with more complex issues than phobias. Family dysfunction that trained you to stay small. Abuse that carved into your sense of self-worth. Ingrained coping mechanisms, people-pleasing, hypervigilance, self-abandonment, that you might be terrified to let go of because they feel like survival strategies. The principle is the same. The complexity is higher, yes. The layers are deeper. But the neurobiological mechanism remains. If an event can program your nervous system, a consciously simulated event can reprogram it. Because your brain can't easily distinguish between externally experienced and internally generated stimuli. This works because of a principle in neuroscience called memory reconsolidation. Every time you activate a memory or a fear response, there's a brief window where that memory becomes unstable, open to editing. If you activate the fear response but pair it with a new experience, like imagining mastery instead of threat, the memory gets updated when it reconsolidates. You're literally rewriting the code. And here's something critical I discovered. Fear and dominance cannot coexist in your nervous system. Submission and aggression are mutually exclusive states. You cannot simultaneously embody threat and power. This is why imagining myself dominating the dogs worked so powerfully. I wasn't just reducing fear, I was installing an incompatible state. When you vividly simulate yourself as powerful, capable, in control, your nervous system cannot maintain the fear program. Here's the framework. Step 1. Identify the prediction error. What threat is your brain overestimating? What capacity is your brain underestimating? Write it out. My brain predicts X is dangerous and I can't handle it. The reality is Y. Step 2. Recognize this as programming, not identity. You are not an anxious person. You're a capable person whose nervous system temporarily does anxiety. This pattern is foreign software, not your essential self. Create distance. The anxiety is happening versus I am anxious. Step 3. Design embodied mental simulations. Not calm visualization, visceral, emotionally intense scenarios. Must engage your limbic system, not just your cortex. Make it over the top if needed, like me fighting imaginary dogs. The goal: create felt experiences, not just thoughts. Step 4. Repetition until body updates. Do this 50, 100, 200 times if needed. Your brain needs sufficient evidence to update its priors. You'll know it worked when the physical response changes. The mind-body gap will close. Step 5. Don't surrender to learned sensations. While you're waiting for your body to catch up, don't act on the fear. The body is a slower system. Give it time. Keep providing new data through your simulations. Trust the neuroplastic process. Here's what this means for you. You don't need a therapist to fix you. You need to understand your own neurobiology and run your own experiments. You don't need years of processing to understand where your anxiety came from. You need to give your prediction system new data so it can recalculate. You don't need to accept that this is just how you are. You need to recognize the difference between a state, what you're doing, and a trait, who you are. Anxiety became a trait through unconscious repetition. It can become just an occasional state through conscious repetition. The same neuroplasticity that created your anxiety can dissolve it. The same brain that learned fear can learn mastery. If external experiences sculpted your brain into anxiety, conscious experiences can sculpt it out. You're not powerless. You're not broken. You're not stuck. You're running outdated software. And you can become the programmer. This is psychological sovereignty. This is what happens when you stop outsourcing your healing and start directing your own neuroplasticity. This is what's possible when you understand the mechanism instead of just managing symptoms. If this resonated, I'm building a complete framework for self-directed psychological transformation. Not therapy, not coaching. Applied neuroscience you can run yourself. This video is just the beginning. The next one will break down the exact mental simulation protocol I used, the specific techniques that make embodied imagination work. But for now, try this. Pick one fear, one anxiety trigger, and ask yourself, what prediction error is my brain making? And what new experiential data could I provide to update it? Then run the experiment. Because you're not broken. You're just running on old code. And it's time to reprogram yourself.